Welcome to Uncommon Ministry. It's been a while, to say the least, in quite a few months. But without any further delay, let me jump into the purpose of the channel and this series that I'm doing. I have a lot of information, a lot of spiritual, inspirational, uh, scriptural information to share uh, with all of you. Okay. One thing I want to touch on real brief before I actually get into it is, you know, every day there's something new. Every day there's a new development, and every day there's some type of suffering. We know this, which is hence the series of this channel. Not this channel, but also this series. So recently, what crossed my mind was, it seems like you hear it all the time. We're in the last excuse me, we're in the last days, and it just seems like it's really the last days, and none of us know when the last day is. It could be, the next minute, it could be right now, it could be tomorrow, it could be whenever. And what crossed my mind was, it really seems like, this is it. I don't know what the next year is going to bring, or the next month for that matter. And what crossed my mind was simply this, that, and in terms of relationships, right, particularly with the whole data that's been released now with the failure of marriage, which is under the sanctity of God, and how there's so many divorces and the divorce rates are going high. It's just really, we're in a very confusing time. But long story short, what the Lord laid on my heart was, take courage. Pretty much, take courage, and don't be, how can I say, don't be overwhelmed. Try not to be overwhelmed with what's going on, because what it is, this is just another wave. This is just my interpretation. I could be wrong, but take it for what it's worth and let it register with your spirit. This is just another wave. And what I mean by that is, for those of us who are made to love others and combine and join with other people, and basically it's not as unique as you think. We have been made to coexist. We have been made to bond with one another. That's how God made us. There's studies that show, and we experience this with everything from 9/11 and the whole political landscape and the division of Democrats, Republicans, which still goes on today, the whole politics game. And then top it off with COVID, with the whole quarantine and that whole vitriol thing, and people even living with each other. It's really confusing, because I'm saying that to say, in one breath, we have been made to be with each other. That's why, if you've heard and you've seen in movies or what have you, those who are incarcerated, if they do something real bad, a punishment is to put them in the hole, as it were, or the brink. And what that means is isolate them from everybody else. And there's been studies that have shown that people who do not interact with other people for a long period of time, they tend to go crazy, because we need each other. It's a biological fact. We need each other. But having said that, when I talk about COVID and we talk about the quarantine and two people together who so-called as a biological need, we need each other. They go at it, it's a battle, and it's a can't stand each other and want to get away from each other. You know what I mean? It can be confusing. But just in general, you may not need that individual, that you might have been with that individual for a certain period of time, and their shortcomings or quirks upset you, and you got your likes and dislikes and things of that nature, and to be surrounded with this individual on a constant basis can be frustrating, overwhelming. You don't want to be with that person. That doesn't necessarily mean you don't want to be with people. It just means you don't want to be with that individual. So I'm trying to help clarify the confusion by that statement right there. Bottom line is, people, we need each other. We need to connect. There's a study that's done on this, and I encourage you to do research on it to, figure it out. Not to figure it out, but to confirm it for yourself. I'm big on that. So we do need people. And I'm saying all that to say that with everything going on in in terms of relationships and those who find themselves quote unquote alone or lonely, and with the high divorce rates, you find yourself, and I say you in terms of me as well. These thoughts cross my mind. I think about this as well through experiences, through friends, family, colleagues, associates. For men and to an extent for women, it's very paralyzing. We're in a very paralyzing state, because we want to be with someone in a relationship, but the way it's been, the way the society is set up now, the relationship now is very toxic. It's very vitriol, if that's the right word in this case. You don't want to be with someone who's going to take advantage of you. You don't want to be with someone who's going to abuse you. You don't want to be with someone who's going to manipulate you, right? So at the same time, we feel that need to want to belong and want someone to need us. At the same time, we don't want anyone to take advantage of us. We don't want anyone to try and manipulate us. So it's like a minefield of trying to figure out the right person for us as individuals who are going to appreciate us, right? And that's vice versa. Two individuals who appreciate one another, who respect one another. And that's what I meant by that in terms of waves. It's a wave that's happening right now. Yeah, and the advent of that wave came about through social media and technology. Whereas now we as humanity have been given another mechanism in which to feed that thing that we feel is missing in us. And as we're trying to figure this out as humanity, the enemy, Satan, is using this to divide, to conquer, to snatch as many as he can. And those who are believers know what I mean by that. So I just wanted to encourage you believers out there who have been blessed to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, to just take heart. And this isn't to exclude those who don't have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. The goal and the purpose is to help graft you in and to help you establish that personal relationship with Jesus Christ so he can be a part of you, to give you the peace in the midst of all this chaos that we're experiencing in this world today. So this is not to exclude you. I'm just saying that in reference to believers who have somewhat already experienced with having a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, to just stay encouraged, be encouraged, and stay in your square. And to understand, based on my observation, just my observation, that this is just a wave Satan is using, and because God is in charge anyway, as humanity, we will figure it out. So don't be discouraged and don't be confused. It's just a wave. And the reason why it seems like everything is crazy and the relationships are crazy and, all this confusion is out there is because of this new technology, and Satan is trying to capitalize on the confusion. Because, as the word says, he is the author of confusion. So I just wanted to say that real quick, even though that took a couple of minutes. All right. So now let's get right into the heart. So I gave the intro on what this series is going to be about, and now I'm going to get into it, and it's going to be somewhat, I don't know if the right word is stoic, but it's really going to be information that I'm sharing with little interjection of my perception or my thoughts on it to a degree. Okay, so here we go. So this series, Why Does God Allow Suffering, is from a book called Collections of Examine the Evidence by Ralph O. Moncaster. And again, the reason why I decided to do this series and have done this research is because there's this big thing, especially in today's society, where the Bible cannot be trusted because it was written by man. And although that is true, it is the only known source of information that we have as humanity that connects us to our Creator, higher being. It hasn't been any other, and I'm speaking in reference to the Holy Bible specifically. There hasn't been any other book that has been written or revealed to humankind that is somewhat on the same scale of our Creator speaking to us in book form, right, through prophets and things of that nature. And that's not to exclude the Quran and all these other books as well, which based on studies and based on time and historical references and things of that nature, all derived from the book, the Holy Bible. And I'm going to go into it in more depth, in more depth, in terms of comparing these various sources, the Book of Enoch, the Quran, the Bible, things of that nature. So that's why this series is important, and you want to stay tuned. And they're going to range. Some parts of this series is going to be an hour, other parts less than an hour, some parts maybe more than an hour, but I'm gonna do my best to keep it within the time frame of that hour, no more than an hour and 30 minutes, if that. And either way, you can always pause the video and come back just to get the information. Okay, so again, I got this information I'm getting. Part of the resource, part of the source is a book called Why Does God Allow Suffering? From the Book of Collections of Examine the Evidence by author Ralph O. Moncastle. Okay? The sources that I'm going to be referring to in this series are going to include The Meaning of the Dead Sea Scrolls by Vanderkam and Flint, which I probably already addressed in the intro. The Complete Book of Enoch, Standard English Version by Dr. J. Winter. And then How to Make a Negro Christian by and with commentary from analysis of Kameo, Casey Tehuti, The Reprinting of the Religious Instruction of the Negroes and Other Works by Dr. Reverend Charles Colcock, Jones. And at the time that I initially started this series, which was some time ago, there has been a lot of developments that have taken place since then. Some of you may be aware of it, and if not, take some time to look it up. Google is a good source for that. And there's this big argument in regards to the true Hebrews. Who were the true Hebrews, right? And this whole big thing of where African Americans are placed in society, and the whole controversy and confusion over, that whole thing. Hebrews, Jews, things of that nature. So as I go through this series from these sources, because there's a lot more sources, but hopefully it gives you something to work with or something to build on. Hopefully I give you something to think about that encourages you to do further research to help you draw a closer connection to the Creator, popularly known as I mentioned before, God. Others have different titles, but one thing is the same and universal among us as humanity, and that is we all have there's one Creator. Let me put it that way. There's one Creator for us all. Goes by various different names, but there's one Creator for us all. All right, so part 1A, the key issues. I got this from page 7 of the book that I mentioned to you, Why Does God Allow Suffering? Point 1 is, does an all-powerful God exist, right? Does an all-powerful Creator exist? This question has been asked since the beginning of the human race. All cultures show evidence of a belief in God that goes back to this beginning. Through the traditions of some cultures also suggest the existence of an equal counterpart to God, who is evil, a belief known as dualism. The Bible is the only written resource proven to contain information about God, and it clearly indicates both the existence and the all-powerful nature, omnipotence of God. He has no equal, and evil will not prevail in the end. Now, I use the term, brief side note, I use the term God in this series, but like I said, other people have different names for the Creator. But in this series, I'm referring to God. So as you're reading it or as you're taking notes, feel free to change the word God to how you title or label the Creator. So that's just a side note. All right, 2. Is God personal? Some people believe that God is merely a cosmic force that neither cares about nor interact with human beings, since he or it has no personality. Again, we need to start with a provable base of information, which is the Bible. The Bible is reliable, and it tells us that a very personal God exists. This is written in John 3:16, where in John 3:16 it reads, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life." Number 3, is God loving? Even the Bible portrays God as unloving according to some people. For instance, they say God allowed and even brought severe punishment upon humans. However, this idea needs to be reviewed within the context of the entire character of God, who is holy, just, and loving. Often these judgments were actually very loving acts when we consider them from the perspective of humanity as a whole. The Bible clearly declares that God is love, and this is found in 1 John chapter 4, verses 7 and 8, where it reads, "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God." Verse 8, "He who does not love does not know God, for God is love." Number 4, then why would God allow pain and suffering to exist? Most people would agree that some pain is good. For example, it can warn us that we are sick and teach us to avoid touching hot stoves, for example. It is the much more difficult to understand seemingly senseless suffering allowed by God that is the focus of the questions in this book. Now that concludes part 1, in the series that I have here, part 1A rather, of this series that I'm doing. From what I just read, John 3:16, an all-loving God. Why does God allow suffering, or whether God is love? Refer to 1 John chapter 4, verse 7 and 8. I encourage you to just start there. Just start with baby steps, step by step. Read those verses, but I also want to encourage you to read not only those verses, but read the entire chapter. Just start there. You may not get that may not answer your question or questions in regards to the validity of the Bible yet, but I'm getting there, and I want to start slowly. I want to start step by step, little by little. Give you some time to, register the information that I'm sharing so that it's not overwhelming. And it gives you some time to really put the pieces together as we grow in this series together. Thank you. Appreciate you. God bless you. God love you. And I'll hear from me. Or I'll speak to you, and you'll hear from me in the next video. God bless.